Welcome back to CCG TV, Capital Claims Group. Please like, subscribe, get all your insurance information. So I want to just talk about 3 quick points today. I want to talk about misalignment, misinformation, and mismanagement in the insurance claims process or the insurance policy. So let's talk a little bit about misalignment, where the contract says one thing and the claims handling or the claims process looks like a total different thing. And I believe that this is where most disputes start, where coverage language versus the field inspection or the interpretation of the policy. The policies provide coverage for physical and direct loss. But during the adjustment process, this sometimes can be redefined, because now I have to ask the question. And the question is, where in the policy does it says visible creasing only or must exceed 25% to even qualify? So if it's not written, then it's up for interpretation. Then you have your replacement costs versus depreciated payment. Policies promise replacement cost value, but insurers normally get ACV check or actual cash value check first. And a lot of times that check is given to the insured without clear explanation on even how to recover the depreciation. So that right there alone is a communication failure. So policy misalignment happens when matching statutes are not applied, law and ordinance are not even evaluated, code upgrades are treated like upgrades and not compliances. Policy is a legal contract that should be adjusted the way that is written, not the way somebody prefers to adjust it. Let's get into another critical one. Number 2, misinformation. I think this right here, misinformation, is a silent claim killer. One of the most common misinformation that we always hear. We'll find the claim, automatically raise my rates. I understand from everybody's perspective. As a homeowner, you don't want that rate to go up. As a business owner, you're thinking about the bottom line. As somebody who's on the board or the HOA board, you still have all these people that you have to answer to if these rates go up, if you make a decision or they feel like the decision was made. If you file a claim, your rates go up. It's just not universally true. Rates are based on risk pools. So you need to understand that filing the claim is not punishment for using coverage. It's not punishment because you use your coverage. So I think that's one of the biggest misinformation in our industry. Let's go a little bit more. You only have one chance to submit damages. That's false. Most policies allow supplemental claims when additional damage is discovered. So if you find more damage, if you need a second opinion and you got a second opinion, you find more damage, you can submit that. That's supplemental. Here's a good one. Engineer said it was wear and tear. Did they say that conclusively, or was there other language being used, such as possibly, could have, could not be determined? Speculation is not causation. When they speculate or they're not giving a definitive answer, because that's what you hire an engineer for, right? You want a definitive answer. So if that engineer or the carrier sends an engineer out and they give a possibly answer, then that's real misinformation, because you got to read these engineer reports so you can really see what they're writing. This is one I've come across sometimes also. There's no interior damage, so there's no coverage. Wind damage does not require interior leaks to trigger coverage. That's just misinformation. If the shingle is damaged, if there's wind damage or hail damage, then it's coverage. It does not require interior damage for coverage to be triggered. Misinformation thrives when insurers do not read the policy or adjusters rely on summary statements instead of contract analysis, right? Or really looking at what the policy says. Those are some of the biggest things or some of the most common things that I hear or see about when it comes to misinformation. Let's go into number 3, mismanagement. Mismanagement is not always malicious. Sometimes there's a ton of volume that the carriers are dealing with. They may have a bunch of claims going all at once. A lot of times it's training gaps. So training could be an issue on why there's some mismanagement. Other times there's KPI pressures, right? They got to hit these numbers. They got to hit this. They got to hit that. This got to close within 24 to 48 hours. We got to be out. We got to submit something. So these are some of the pressure points where we see mismanagement in claims. Let's talk about incomplete inspections. Adjuster never got on the roof. Adjuster never looked in the attic. The adjusters normally never moisture map. You can't really evaluate a claim without a proper inspection. Now, 2026, we're still getting these copy and paste denial letters, right? If a denial letter does not address your specific evidence, it's not a true investigation. It's not a true investigation if you're saying, hey, can you address this, right? Failure to answer those direct questions that we submit to the carriers. What the policy exclusion applies. What standards did you use to determine if this was a repair versus replacement? And you get the silence. This is a procedural mismanagement, right? Delays without explanation. Every state has their own Fair Claims Practices Act. Delays without it's not being reasonably explained. So claims handling is not just technical, it's also fiduciary in nature. And I want you guys to really, really think about this. Insurance itself is non-monolithic. Insurance companies are not like a single thinking organism. They're layered, right? It's a layered system. We're talking about underwriting claims, engineers, field adjusters, desk adjusters, SIU, management review. Each operates different and they have different information that they all have to rely on. So when someone says my insurance or the insurance company denied me, what they usually mean is one segment of a non-monolithic system has made a decision based on some limited inputs. So non-monolithic interpretation of policy language. So we have to remember that the policy language is fixed, but interpretation is not. So within the same carrier, you can see one field adjuster say, this is wind damage. And by the time it gets to the desk adjuster, somebody else is saying, no, this is wear and tear. Then you say, hey, let's get a reinspection. Then the management says, no reinspection is needed. Things go on, it goes to appraisal. The appraisal panel awards a full roof replacement. That's not consistency because the contract didn't change. The human interpretation is the only thing that changed. And just going back to the point of all these different things and all these different people that are involved in the claim process. So you have underwriting who focuses on profitability. Vendors, their focus is repeat business. And the policy holder, their focus is restoration. Now, these interests are not aligned. So we want to dump into that high claim volume, performance metrics, vendor relationship. This all can create a bunch of internal tension. Look, I don't want to give you a bunch of problems without a solution. So what does proper alignment look like? Policy language cited verbatim on all denials, inspection photos attached to every conclusion, clear explanation on depreciation and recovery, open channels about supplements. I think those are some of the things that could help bring some solution to some of the problems. And documentation reviewed before decision is affirmed. Transparency is going to reduce a lot of the conflict. And I'm gonna leave you with this as I close this out. Insurance is not evil. The problem is insurance is non-monolithic. It's a contract. Misalignment creates conflict. Misinformation creates confusion. Mismanagement creates distrust, but clarity creates resolution. If we all had clarity on these claims, this clarity would create more resolution.